Leanne.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good, thank you very much. Enjoying BSides?
Very much so.
First time in Lisbon?
Yes, yeah.
Did you manage to explore a little bit?
A bit, but as you know, I have my eyes set on doing some gaming while I'm here as well. So.
That's a good... Well, it's not too far off one up, so you should be able to get there pretty easily. I'm sure someone from staff will be able to take you there as well. So first question I'll ask, how was it like to deliver the lightning talk yesterday? Unexpected.
Yeah, it was unexpected. You know, I'm really familiar with the content, so that helped. I think that I'm glad everyone sort of peer pressured me into doing that, because what I think is, I mean, I know this is very much the subject of some of the talks or content that we've seen here today, which is it's really important to share. And I think BSides is a community event, and it is essential within security that we are very liberal with sharing our knowledge. I think that's important. It's a gift. It's a gift not only to educate yourself, but also to give back. So I've been really enjoying the event. The weather's fantastic here as well, which is a bonus, obviously.
It is.
Yeah, but also very lucky because usually we don't get November like this.
No?
Yeah, well, it depends.
Yeah.
It's pretty much summer all year around, so...
But it's still pretty warm.
It is. But what was your lightning talk yesterday?
It was briefly on how I bought an ATM legally, and then ways in which you can hack an ATM.
Okay.
Legally.
Yeah. So I guess to come back to that a bit, it wasn't something I'm used to doing, but I was familiar with the content. I think you saw how quickly I put together some slides. And I think it's an interesting topic because a lot of people would assume that you would have to attempt to buy that illegally, or it's not feasible for someone to do, or it's very expensive. And hopefully people can see that, if they have an idea, just with a bit of enthusiasm, that can carry you through, it can carry you quite far, and you just have to be a bit persistent.
I think it actually happened yesterday because, you weren't prepared in the sense you didn't know you were doing that, but yet your lightning talk got voted the best lightning talk. And in my opinion, you should have submitted that talk as a full-on talk. So,
thank you.
Actually, my question is that, why did you decide to attend but not submit a talk?
Okay, that's an interesting question. So I actually just wanted to come and enjoy the event. I've been travelling quite a lot over the last couple of weeks. So I spoke at Hacktivity, which is in Budapest, and then I went straight to 8.8 in Chile, which is also another great conference. And then I've been sort of back in Europe for about a week. So I plan to come to this event, see some friends talk, and for me, I just wanted to go to a conference and really be able to appreciate the content for a bit.
Because this year I got to pick the keynotes. I mentioned this during Javad's talk. And actually before, picking Javad and JP Almason, I tried to actually try and find women to do the talk. So I wanted to try and get one man, one woman to do the talk. But I wasn't just going to pick women for the sake of it. So I tried to find two women that over this year gave interesting talks. I spoke to both of them, and they were fully booked. So it's actually not easy to try and find women to do talks.
Yeah.
In terms of submissions, we had 50 submissions, and only one came from a woman. So
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's why you invited me, because of my long hair.
Exactly. Your long, beautiful hair.
I know.
So it would be great, if we actually got more women to submit as well, because we do want to try and enable women to talk, because they have as much or more technical skill than guys do. It's not even a comparison that should be put on the table.
Sure.
So I was just trying to understand if maybe there was something that, maybe blocked you in relation to the event that blocked you from submitting the talk, or if it was just external factors.
I don't think there's anything specifically that blocked me, and I think I would encourage a lot of people to have the confidence to submit and just give it a chance. And I think, at least from my experience as well, and I think it is the case for a lot of people, is they might be nervous about sharing information or not. They might feel like they haven't got anything to say, or it's not important and people don't want to hear it. But I would just say go for it. So I don't think it's anything specifically to do with gender. I think we have a lack of diversity in the industry, which is obviously a very complex issue. And we've got to encourage more diversity in the industry, not just because we're lacking it, but if you look at organisations, they perform better financially when they have more diversity. So there's a clear reason for doing that.
It was interesting for me because actually out of all the people that voted on the talks, I was the only one that didn't know who the speakers were, because essentially we get an Excel sheet with all the talks. And in my case, I delete the column with the names. So I knew which talks were being delivered, but I didn't know who the speakers were because I vote without the names showing, exactly to try and remove that bias. That I don't know if I have or I don't, but at least that way I guarantee I don't have it. So it's quite interesting to me to arrive here yesterday and like, oh, so you're giving that talk or you're giving that talk. As a conference organizer, is there more I can be doing to try and, get more women to submit, get more women to even attend? Because even our attendance rates are quite low. So is there more I can be doing for this?
So I think that's a big problem across the industry again. I've definitely seen some women around in this event.
I'm trying to check the rates actually, just to see.
Can you? I think, one of the challenges is we're still dealing with like very old stereotypes of what it means to work in technology, not even specifically in security, right? Which is completely wrong. I truly think all you need is a curious mind and there is a place for you in this industry. I really think that. It's nothing to do with, people have these ideas still that it's like maybe you have to be antisocial or you have to be a very specific kind of personality or whatever, and that's completely wrong. So I think as long as you're curious, there's a place for you here and you should definitely check it out. And don't be deterred by the fact that there's a lot of guys at all. I mean, they can be your friends too. So.
Have you ever had any complicated situations in terms of harassment, or have you ever felt, those situations affecting you as well?
I think every woman probably in every industry has experienced things like that. I don't personally think it's unique to working in this particular industry. If you look at the statistics, there's like 1 in 4 women will be, sexually assaulted in their lifetime. So we're looking at like significant problems that are broader than a specific industry. I've certainly encountered some issues. I would say that as a woman working in security when I was much younger, one of the challenges was I felt very much like I had to probably know 150% of something in order to feel like I was valid to sit at the table or in order to support my argument. And there were many times when I know people push subjects or quite aggressive in terms of questioning my knowledge to be there. And it takes a while as a young person of any gender or orientation to build up that confidence to say, like, I have a right to be here, I have an opinion, I know enough. But I've certainly experienced that. And I don't know exactly what we can do. I think the problem is very complex, and the only way to deal with that is in a number of ways. One is looking at education, so looking at secondary schools, we call it in the UK. I don't know what you call it.
Yes,
yeah. So when you're still a teenager, okay, well, are there any ideas we're reinforcing about specific industries because we have a problem in science and technology and engineering, right? So where is that coming from? Is it coming from, like, it must be coming from very early developmental stages. It must be coming from having specific ideas about, some of those very binary ideas about, well, you can only do physics if you're a guy, or you can only... And the other thing is, you can only do security if you've got a degree in computer science. That's wrong as well.
Of course.
Do you think that, because a few years ago, I now remember how the whole security thing started here in Portugal. It was pretty much the same. So a few years ago, we had a bunch of guys that were working in the mobile industry.
Yeah.
As you can imagine, these quite close a few years ago, 10 years ago, and we pretty much didn't have any kind of meetups and stuff like that. Security was pretty much the same, right? So everyone was just behind their own avatar, their own nickname on a channel or something, and they weren't quite keen on going into this kind of conferences and expose themselves as, well, I'm the guy behind something that someone just discovered. Is that the kind of feeling that you have, or the perception that you have regarding this kind of community?
I think sometimes, there's maybe an unwillingness to talk about certain things because it might put you in a specific position. Because sometimes we see as researchers, one of the downsides of talking about research is people will have the broad opinion. The public might have the opinion that, in a way, you're educating criminals on how to do this stuff. That's obviously not the purpose of talking about research, is so we can actually drive change, not encourage criminals, because there's quite a difference between being a criminal and being a regular person. It's like, would you steal a loaf of bread from a shop? No, most people wouldn't. So that's the difference when people say, what's the difference between being a hacker and like being a black hat? Well, quite a big difference is your intentions, right? So there is a bit of that. There is a bit of concern, I think, for some people around not wanting to deal with the bad press, because that is the downside, is when you talk about your findings, you do get a lot of that negative press as well. I've certainly experienced it where either people will deny the things that you've exposed, and you have to deal with quite difficult journalists sometimes. But that's the responsibility of talking about your research, or you'll just deal with people that have quite direct kind of trolling, I guess, against you as well. So I can completely understand why some people might never want to expose themselves, because as soon as you do that, then you're in the public domain. And then people on the internet feel like, because they have, the privacy of the internet, that they can say whatever they want.
Then if they go to conferences or something like that, they're going to get more exposed, and they get some kind of confrontation or something. Or...
Sure, and that's certainly not for everyone, right? People have like family lives, and or even the fact that we know the US government and other governments obviously monitor things like social media and the internet. So there's all of that.
How do you see the whole Trump cyber US Russia hack thing playing along? Because there's a lot of, I see a lot of missing information and a lot of people denying that actually the whole thing didn't took place. We see the same thing in the UK, so a lot of support for the Brexit and stuff like that coming from Russia. We see that in Europe. How do you see the whole cyber security playing along in the future?
So I think it's really hard as a security professional to really comment on political motivations at all, to be honest. It's certainly not my experience. But we are obviously seeing evidence of that being used for applying, kind of pushing policy. That seems to be the suggestion, right? But I don't particularly know. I mean, we're certainly moving towards a world where we're living with ideas of cyber warfare, whether they are at nation-state level or... So I personally can't comment. I mean, I don't know what your feelings are. Like, it's very difficult to determine in any way, like, what is truth and what is fiction and what lies between, and especially with things like the media, right? Even before social media became so prevalent in our lives, if you look at the role of media historically, some of it is propaganda. So it's very difficult as a normal person to determine what is propaganda, what is actually influence, right? Everyone's got an agenda. All of these organisations have agendas. You don't know if they're influenced by government. I have no idea. But I certainly know that media organisations, they have their own personal agenda. They're run by, specific executives which are towing a line. So that's got to influence the kind of content that's put out. We're then told that that's truth, but we don't really know how much of that is truth and fiction.
They all attended Javad's lecture, I'm sure. Edit, and put an image out there to try to transmit what you want. So they learned from you, Javad. Okay, my last question, and this is actually something I want to get your opinion on, because it's a conflict I have with some of the organizers of the conference, which is COCs, right? So we have a COC, Code of Conduct, for the conference, because one of our sponsors only said, we will give you sponsorship if you guys have a COC.
Okay.
But I'm of the opinion that COCs actually don't work. I don't think that if someone is going to conference with the mindset, I'll harass a woman or I'll misbehave, I don't think it's a piece of paper that's going to stop them or deter them or really do much. What's your opinion there?
Well, I think that's probably driven by liability, right? Yeah. Which is someone somewhere needs that paperwork in order to say, look, we've dealt with this risk as much as possible. So It's more about shifting liability. Sometimes that's legal issues. So yeah, if we look at like how much does that work? Well, it only really works if you check that it's working. It's like, oh, you can say the law, but
then you don't really need a COC, right? If this is a private event, if I see someone misbehaving, really, I'm not going to grab a piece of paper. Exactly, I'm just going to kick him out. If he doesn't want to be kicked out, I'm going to call the police. But that's like obvious human behavior, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
common sense.
Common sense, right? So I don't, a lot of people push forward for, COCs will save conferences and you guys need a COC and all that. I just don't see it that way.
I think it's also a challenge as a small conference as well. That's a community event, right? It puts more overhead on you as organisers, which is a bit of a challenge. But I think that just comes from the world that we live in now, right? And especially if you look at some parts of the West, like America, they're particularly driven by things like that as well. So we just have to accept them. But yeah, in reality, does it do that much? No, it doesn't.
Yeah. Well, actually, I was last week. I was at an Amazon event. So it was the first Amazon event that I got the email of COC, right? So no harassment, a bunch of rules and so forth. Well, this is the first time I'm looking at something, and they tell me that actually I need to accept something to go to a conference.
Okay.
So it was the first time that I got, well, this is getting really either out of hand or really serious, because for me that's kind of common sense, right? So
of course it's the same with the analogy that I said, right? It depends on people's intentions, right? You're either going to be someone who does those things and has that drive to do those things for whatever reason, those motivations, or you're not. Mm-hmm. Many of those things are just the ethics that we carry with us naturally, like to say, oh, I'm not going to do that.
Exactly.
But I think it's probably just a liability thing, and it comes down to, at the end of the day, if you've agreed to that, then they might be able to easily prosecute someone. Yeah. Okay.
Well, Leigh, that's all from me. Thank you very much for coming to BSides, and hopefully we'll see you next year.
Thank you. Thanks.
With a talk submission.
All right. Okay. Great.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks.